but he wouldn't be around anymore for that. Might I get an embrace? Aren't you asking for too much? Wasn't it you who kissed me first? That was me drunk, she blushed. He laughed. You remember then? You are such a bad actress. Ratri shook her head as she came forward and embraced him, her nails digging into his skin, the scent of soap from his hair permeating her nostrils. She felt so small around his wrapped arms. It was nice having a friend like you, she said, pulling back. He had gone red. Like always, it is the same for me. I hope I return and we talk more than we usually did. I will show you the theatre here. Is it boring? Will I understand? Ratri held onto his hands. With me, you'll understand everything. And then there was a knock on the door. Ratri let go his hand as she saw Kumar coming out of his hole, reaching for the door. Ratri whistled at Kumar to not open it right away. Ratri nodded at Bala silently and he swiftly walked to the back, waking up Kalki from his room, Kripa from the corridor. As they went downstairs, Ratri walked to the door, opening it, only to find a familiar figure staring at her. Bald head, sunken eyes and dark skin, a black dhoti wrapped around his waist, and a black robe wrapped across his chiseled, lanky frame. It was none other than the commander of the city. Hello there, Kali rasped, showing the letter in his hand while he stood in front of his twin guards. I got your invite. Might I come in to talk for a while? Astras, explosives made out of soma ores, were wrapped in a cloth. Kripa had said that she needed to burn the leaves sticking out of it. Let it reach the ore and then it would burst. It would give her enough time to throw it across at her target and run away while it caused a huge explosion. But igniting it to kill a little girl was the burden she would carry herself. But she couldn't find the chambers of Vedanta where she could detonate the bomb. Perhaps he wasn't even here at the fort. Though she found Urvashi's room clutching the balcony parapet outside her room. She could hear her faint voice. You can leave, she said to someone. But Princess, kingship has told me not to. I don't care. The voice was childish. You stay out there. I don't like anyone watching me sleep. Kingship will cut my head off, the soldier pleaded. I will do the same if you don't leave. There was a scuffle. Can I at least close the windows? I like the breeze. Do you want me to die in this heat? No, of course not. Princess, he whimpered. Good, leave then. The door was shut off. Padma waited, still clinging to the edge, her fingers wanting some rest, but getting none. She could feel the sting as she waited. It had been close to an hour when she could finally hear the faint snoring from Urvashi's room. She came up and jumped inside, making sure her feet made no sound. She saw that in the midst of the candles that burnt in her room, books were piled up, with a cot high above a pedestal. Padma walked towards Urvashi, counting her breaths, not making any noise. Urvashi, she was beautiful, with curly, looking angelic while she slept. She was unharmed by this world, unlike Padma. She had been gifted her childhood, unlike Padma. Jealousy poisoned her thoughts like a wasp sting, as her hands reached for the astras. Should she light them up and leave them like that? That was what she had come for. Destroying the one thing Vedanta valued most, leaving him dead from the inside. That would be a worse punishment than death itself. He would weep and hurt himself, finally resorting to suicide. These thoughts amused Padma, especially since she had lost her only family because of him, burnt and hung like traitors. Anger had made her promise herself that she would bring him to ruin, just like her brothers had gone down. Things had changed since then. She had met and she had lost people. She still remembered the day she was being taught hunting by her youngest brother, Surya, the one who was set to join the army. They were in the forest, in one of the woods that surrounded Indra, and they were hunting a jackal. Padma, without the use of an arrow, tried spearheading the animal, but it hadn't worked. It dodged and chased for his life, even as Padma shot multiple arrows at it, finally resulting in a win. The jackal had lain there while Padma and Surya walked to it. It was still breathing, for the arrow had struck his paws. Well, this is something, the honeyed voice of Surya echoed. You didn't kill him. Padma pulled out the dagger and knelt, ready to strike, when Surya grabbed her wrist. Nah, leave it, he said. You crazy, chuckled Padma. We could have a nice fur pelt for ourselves with winter approaching. I know, but you see, clothes and food are not as important as teaching your little sister something. Surya said, your anger let this animal fall on the ground. But you didn't win. I didn't win. I have laid it to the ground. Bah, she retorted. I know, but just because it's down, you haven't won. The world has taught us that to move forward, one must defeat the others. But I don't see it that way. He pulled out the arrow, the jackal still breathing hard, panting, as Surya pulled out a cloth and poured some antiseptic cream on it, applying it to the wound. Kindness and love is what this world needs the most. The jackal slowly stood up, and instead of attacking Surya or Padma, who had instantly pulled back, the jackal licked Surya like a dog on a leash. Surya gave him some food, which the jackal ate from his hand, because kindness, my dear, always reciprocates. Padma, now standing in the center of the room, set down the astras. She went for the candles and knelt down to light them up, even as thoughts somersaulted and collided inside her. Her hands were shivering, and as she was about to reach out for the astras, the flames almost touching them, the girl turned over in his sleep. She backed off, silently, of course, worried, with sweat beads trickling down her face. She came forward to see Urvashi had shifted her position, and right under the cushion of her arm was a wooden figure. It was carved perfectly, had a conical nose and defined head. It was clear to Padma from a cursory survey of the room that Urvashi was fascinated by wooden figurines, just as Padma loved collecting antique coins. It's easy to hate but difficult to forgive. She turned around and her eyes met Arjun's. She almost shrieked at the sight of him, but he instantly put his palms over her lips. What was he doing here? Who's there? Urvashi's voice echoed in the room, as her eyes slowly opened and saw Padma and Arjun in the room. Who are you? She backed off against the corner of the bed, her nightgown crumpling in the process. Using her toy as a weapon, she put up a brave front and asked, "What do you want?" Padma had no real idea what to tell her. Arjun was confused himself. "You are assassins, aren't you? Father told me all about your kind." "But who are you?" Padma grimaced at Arjun, who mouthed at her, "We need to leave." "Guards!" Urvashi yelled. Padma's heartbeat increased as she grabbed the astras from the ground, reaching forward and jumping from the window with Arjun, uncaring that they were jumping to their deaths. She realized this midair, while Arjun used his sickle to claw at the fort walls, until their feet hit the ground and they started dashing away. "Why did you follow me?" "To make sure you didn't do anything foolish." Arjun was running beside her. "But you shouldn't have done anything foolish in trying to stop me from doing anything foolish." She was confused and she was panting, the exertion from her getaway muddling up her words. They were making their way towards the wall that led to the back side of the fort. But now, bells were being rung, and soldiers were following them. They could hear the horses following them from across the stables. Padma reached for the wall, her limbs acrobatically leaping up, till she reached the edge, one leg hanging over the other side, while she leaned down to grab Arjun. He tried to jump, but he could. He used the sickle to make a leap, and as he grabbed her hand, his face contorted into a painful expression. He fell back, unable to stand up. He turned around and Padma saw an arrow had pierced him. Multiple fire arrows were being shot at Padma, but she was dodging most of them. "Come on!" Arjun was still making his way up, his feet struggling, as another arrow struck one of his feet. I can't." He looked up, his face pale as the moon, tears around his eyes. "Leave now." "I can't. Not without you. If you stay." The barks of the hounds were really close now. "They will kill you and me. One of us needs to be there with Kalki." "I don't care about Kalki. I care about you." Arjun smiled. If you really do care about me, go and protect him. Please, stay with him and take him where he's supposed to go. Please, promise me." He held out his hand. Padma nodded, grasping his hand. When the soldiers finally came up close, the hound leaped at Arjun, but with a swift flick of his hand, Arjun clawed its face and flung it away. "Leave now. I will try to stop them." And then another arrow hurt him, and he was pushed against the rocky wall, blood trickling from his mouth, pooling over his tunic. Padma looked at Arjun once, perhaps for the last time. A broken boy who had seen the world for its truth, just like Padma, and who was about to meet his death. Unlike Padma, he didn't deserve it. She did, and she maneuvered and lurched down from the wall, running as quickly as possible, as a volley of fire arrows were rained down on her. Ratri led Kali inside her house, but Kali chose to walk around. He scanned his surroundings. Ratri noticed like a hawk smelling and letting his ears move back and forth, as if he was trying to get a sense of the place. Ratri led him to her study, but Kali sent Coco and Vikoko out in the back to check the other rooms. "I apologize," he said, his voice cold and calculating. "I have grown to such a stature that many want to kill me. It's customary to do a formal checking and recce. Please leave me." Ratri did, sitting on the opposite side of her study. While Kali came forward and sat in front of her. You have a fine yaksh servant at your disposal. He patted the yaksh's head. Thank you for the water, but I won't take it. Kumar went back, mumbling to himself. Kali studied the room while Ratri continued to watch him. The silence was killing her, and thanks to the gods, she had a basement ready where there was a passage leading out of the house and out in the open. It was for emergencies just like this, since she was heavily mired in propaganda and knew one day she had to escape when her house was cornered by swordsmen and archers. They must have left since Coco and Vikoko returned, shaking their heads, and Kali nodded back at them. Coco and Vikoko were popular by now, the twins that had taken the city under their fist. They were everywhere, and most people were scared of their towering brute personalities. I never thought I'd be meeting you. Why is that? I mean, Vedanta had told me so much about you. It was a shame he took away your seat in the government and put you in charge as a librarian with a fancy title to it, but we both know it was to get rid of you. Ratri smiled forcefully. What was this man getting at? At a closer look, Ratri could see how his veins were popping out of his skin. He used to look different, she recalled, with a rather handsome face, long hair, and a charming, disarming smile. At least that was what she had seen when Vedanta was announcing the new leaders of the city, and she was amongst the many nobles forced to clap and applaud. He had changed, but what had made him like this? Only he knew. Vedanta had a poor sense of judgment in your case, so I have decided to replace him. With whom? Kali smiled as if it was obvious. Oh, smugly Ratri nodded. You? Yes, I have decided to be the king now, since matters have forced my hand. I can't do anything but agree. Many in the government feel that way. We tallied and saw. Why wasn't I invited? I asked Vedanta. He said it didn't matter. For all she knew about Vedanta, he couldn't have said that. Perhaps the so-called absurd tally was bribed, forced, or even fictitious, but I, an upstanding citizen now of this city, decided this would not be the case. So I came here to take your vote. What do you propose? Do you think I am capable of being a king? He was acting strangely. It did not seem likely that a person like Kali would bother to travel to the house of a mere functionary in order to get her vote to legitimize his rule. Your silence assures me of a positive response. He nodded. I'm glad, and, of course, thank you for this invite. He signaled at his guards, who went outside, his voice raising high. You have been gracious enough to do that. I always believe books are a way off to heaven, and we can all go on that path if more of us tend to be readers. You have built a healthy, literary heritage. He nodded to himself as his guards came forward with huge terracotta pots in their hands. When I see what is happening in the city, I'm often reminded of a time back in the village I had been temporarily staying at. It had a small tailor's shop I worked at, just as a roller. You know what a roller is? Ratri shook her head. It's the least important and most boring job you can come up with, Kali said. You need to take the clothes the tailor gives you, roll them, and keep them packed. That was it. Anyway, we worked at a barn. We got a customer one day asking us to refund the money we took. And mind you, we took nothing but meager coins for the work we did. We asked why. He showed us his garment, which was torn. It was odd. When he left after receiving his coins, we began to look around, and you know what we found? Ratri remained quiet. Rats, all inside the hay, hiding. Whenever we tried to catch them, we couldn't because they were able to escape. Those little creatures. We tried to ignore them, but they managed to tear our clothes, and we were losing business. People said we didn't do our jobs well. We were on the brink of unemployment when my master the tailor got an idea. You know what he did? No. What did he do? He burned down the barn. What about his employment? He could build the barn again, but he couldn't kill the rats, so he burned down the barn. It was a lovely sight. He paused. I realized that day in order to win some you lose some. Ratri pursed her lips as she looked at the terracotta pots the guards were holding on to, finally realizing what it was about. The entire story. What is going on? Kali stood up, announcing a sign of my respect. He signaled to Coco and Vikoko, who began to spill water everywhere. I am blessing you with the holy liquid. He smirked, but the smell was a giveaway. Ratri stood up and pulled out the knife from underneath the table, where it had been glued. It's oil, hence, it's holy. For fire is where I grew up in, and it's fire where you will die. Why are you doing this? She plunged her blade in the air, but it didn't reach Kali, for he was quick enough to grab her by the throat, pushing her against the wall. Coco and Vikoko used the fire lamps in the house, letting them race across the spilled oil. As she was held captive against the wall, she could see her house burning burning down around her, the smell of charred wood and paper engulfing her nose. I have ravens in the city that speak to me, whisper in my ears about the infidels that have corrupted my city, and guess who they whispered of recently? He whispered in her ears, his voice raspy. You ravens? Of course, spies, informants. But who? Padma. Was it her? No. Was it Kalki? Oh no, did Kali follow them here when they were returning? It could be possible. We should leave, my lord, Vikoko said, hearing a sudden noise. And that is when Kumar entered with a sword, trying to attack, and succeeding in doing so. As he sliced Vikoko's armored leg, Koko came forward near Vikoko and slashed the head of the Yaksh. Ratri yelled in shock, her lungs burning with the smoke. As she coughed and cried, Vikoko groaned, touching the bloody stump on her body as she kicked the head of Kumar across the room. They are always such little idiots, Kali sighed, pushing her against the wall as she felt pain blurring her vision. Ratri flung the dagger that had fallen to the ground, piercing deep into Kali's neck. Kali stopped. His hand reached out for the blade. He calmly pulled it out, looked at his blood, and touched the back of his neck. It didn't even affect him. Nice try, my lady. Perhaps in the afterlife, you can learn not to hit a god with a mere blade. He winked, leaving her in the fire. She staggered on the floor. She tried to save herself from the fire that had begun to engulf the entire room. Ratri could feel the burn in her lungs because the room was slowly running out of clean air to breathe. Her last coherent thought before she passed out was noticing a pair of feet near her head. But wasn't Kumar already dead? No, the feet belonged to none other than Bala, who had come to rescue her. What happened? He cried to her, but words wouldn't make their way out of her mouth. You returned. Ratri smiled weakly as Bala broke through the burning wreckage around them, trying to get them both to a safe place. I had to. I couldn't leave the most amazing person I met to die. He stopped her. The basement door is closed. When the ceiling suddenly caved in, she realized, dimly, that she could see stars in the sky. She swiveled her head, focusing her vision. When she realized her entire house was on fire, it was over. Everything she owned or she would ever own, her partner, Kumar. And then she felt a sudden change in her position. As Bala's arms weakened and she fell to the ground, she looked up. There were 2 arrows in Bala's chest. Ratri turned and saw Kali with Vikoko and Koko, who were using bows and arrows. Bala took out his make, breaking the arrows. Even as blood spilled from his chest. You must run, Kali yawned as he came forward, letting Koko and Vikoko rest their weapons, his eyes blinking as he turned to Ratri, who was still on the ground. I told you, rats just come out when there is fire, and then they die. He was close to, with a sword in his hand, when Bala blocked her. Ratri yelled, trying to make Bala understand that Kali was somehow immune to blades and other weapons. When everything happened all at once, Bala smashed the make, but before it could hit Kali, his hand stopped him and he twisted Bala's thick, burly arm with ease. Ripping his shoulder joint and bones out, Kali pierced his sword into Bala's neck at the same time, curing him, and his eyes went lifeless. He then twisted the sword upwards, shattering his skull. Bala's body, lifeless, lay on the ground as tears stung Ratri's eyes. She reached out for him, seeing his face destroyed by Kali's ravage. It can't be. And she turned, rasping, her eyes venomous, as she reached for the make that Bala held. Kali brought a sword down on her back, neatly piercing and tossing her to on the ground. She retched, then lay still, her eyes seeing nothing. Kalki thought he had seen everything until the fire blazed inside the house they had just escaped from. The tunnel had led them quite far from it, and he was glad he was away from the wretched man, Kali. But then, the house was aflame, and Kalki tried and failed to stop Bala from leaving. I have to go, brother, he had said. Kalki's energy dead and his joints hurting, took his head. No, he'll kill you. I won't let Ratri die. And Kalki understood what Bala was feeling. That's how he had felt as he raced across the plains of Shambhala only to find Lakshmi dead. He understood it, but he knew Bala would be in grave trouble if he went. Stay safe, Bala nodded, and with a smile said, I believe in you, brother. I believe in the cause. Bring back order again, and he left, sprinting across the field. Kalki remained there. The fire had caused most of the house to crumble. Where was Arjun? Where was the new girl Padma? Why was everything so dire? It had been an hour, and the house he had lived in was now ash. People had gathered around it, But Kalki didn't understand why. Kalki began to trudge forward with Shuko over his shoulder. When he was toppled over to the ground by Kripa, "You shouldn't leave, let's go." "Bhargav waits for us. I don't care about some man in the hills. This is my family." Kalki began to walk away, gritting his teeth. He had reached and exited the plains when he saw the heart-rending sight before him. A group of people looked at him, some even recognizing him as the prisoner who had escaped on the flying chariot. Kalki found in front of him two corpses, hideously massacred. It was Bala, his face destroyed, and Ratri, a sword sticking out of her spine. Kripa had managed to catch up to him as Kalki fell to the ground, tears welling up in his eyes, his fists clenching with hatred.